Mackenzie, member from Fredericton South.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the Minister and his staff through you. I guess my first question, Mr. Chair, to the Minister is who lobbied him to bring this bill in? Did he meet with any lobbyist registered under New Brunswick's Lobbyist Registry Act regarding this issue?
To the member opposite and leader of his party through the chair, you know what, I don't remember having exact meetings about it. I do remember talking to Krista Ross from Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. I remember talking to John from the Greater Moncton Chamber of Commerce, the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. When you meet them at events, and certainly CFIB, you meet them at events, meet them at budget speeches, capital budget speeches, stuff like that. I remember talking to them and them mentioning that, yeah, they don't like this passive income, this tax that the feds want to add. But I got to tell you, if I went back in my schedule, member, then I could tell you for sure, and I would have to go back and look at the schedule. If I had any meetings, I don't remember because I have meetings all day long with different people all the time.
Thank you for that answer. I guess I looked at the lobbyist registry, and there are of course a number of companies who have lobbyists who are registered as lobbying the Department of Finance. So that's, you know, but they could be of course lobbying on all kinds of other things. But they include, you have mentioned the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Moosehead Breweries, New Brunswick Business Council, and Irving Oil specifically. Now on this, you say a tax increase, but really, this is going to remove a tax exemption essentially federally, and it would have provincially. So the finance minister federally, after making significant changes to this as a result of the issues raised by small business, said that in its final form, it really would only apply to 3% of the richest private corporations. Have you done the math in New Brunswick to see whether that is accurate or whether his estimate is high for us or low for us?
Through the chair to the member opposite. I don't know where the federal minister would be getting that, because this only applies to small businesses. About 350 to 400 small businesses in New Brunswick will be eligible for this. So it isn't about the richest corporations at all. It's about small business.
Well, it's about Canadian-controlled private corporations, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, just to clarify this, whether the Minister of Finance could say that any Canadian-controlled private corporation is able to claim the small business rate up for their first, whatever it is, $150,000 of income.
As I understood the question, Mr. Speaker, through you to the member opposite, can any Canadian private corporation claim it on the first 500K? No, not any Canadian private corporation can. They have to have the capital assets of less than $15 million. So, and then it would be on the first 500K.
Okay, so I guess that's the answer, Mr. Chair, that if a corporation has less than $15 million in capital assets, they can claim the small business deduction of at $500,000. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. On the first 500, yes.
So of the corporations that this tax deferral would affect if it were instituted in New Brunswick provincially, as it is going to be federally, what percentage of those Canadian-controlled private corporations would fit into that category?
Through the chair to the member opposite, it would be 350 to 400 businesses, which represents about 1.5% of our businesses.
So again, Mr. Chair, to clarify, so you're saying I don't want the total. What I want is the number of Canadian-controlled corporations in New Brunswick who would be claiming the small business deduction, though no one, I mean, they wouldn't, in most people's view, be a small business. They're just claiming because they have $15 million in assets or less, and they're claiming the small business deduction at $500,000.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the member opposite. I think I've got the answer on it now. So there are about 25,000 small businesses in New Brunswick. 11,000 of those benefit from the small business rate, because some of them don't make enough money, right? And was that the answer to the question? So that's about 350 to 400 small businesses.
Thank you for that answer. So, in response to quite reasonable concerns small business people originally raised to the plans here, this was modified so that just to be clear. So what this is all about is eliminating the tax deferral advantage that occurs when a Canadian-controlled private corporation uses its after-tax business income to invest in passive investments. Now, in response to the concerns that were raised on the federal side, what they've done and how it ended up in their legislation was to exempt $50,000 of that income that would go to passive investments per year. So you can invest $50,000 from your income within the business in passive investments, whatever it is, to take advantage of those, such as well, you gave the list anyways a while ago. And at 5% rate of return, that would maybe give you $1 million in passive in revenue, additional revenue. So that suggests to me that most small businesses will not be captured by this in New Brunswick. That you would have to be generating more than having $50,000 in sort of disposable income that you could then invest in as a passive investment to be touched by this tax deferral change.
Through the chair to the member opposite. There is no tax deferral change. We wanted to protect small businesses from that tax increase, going from 2.5% to 14%. Excuse me. So it's just, what we did was maintain the same rules as last year. What this does is maintain the same rules as last year. So there's no, there is no tax deferral change.
No, I understand. That's the point of your bill, to ensure there's no change to the tax deferral advantage that currently is available. But what I'm saying is that if on the federal side, and if it was adopted provincially, that tax deferral advantage, if you adopted what the feds are doing, would continue to apply to most small businesses in this province because anyone investing $50,000 of after-tax business income would be exempt from the changes the federal government is making that we would make. You would have to invest more to lose that tax deferral advantage that currently is available. Isn't that true?
There you go. Chair, to the member opposite, thank you for the question. So yes, that is true. The first 50,000 a year in businesses, Canadian-controlled private corporations earning between 50,000 and 150,000 in passive income, the small business limit on active business income eligible for federal small business tax rate will be reduced and completely eliminated for small businesses with passive income in excess of $150,000. So yes, that is true.
So the situation remains then that this provides the opportunity for a select few to continue to benefit, if this bill passed, to continue to benefit from the tax deferral that currently is in place, and continues for some perhaps to provide an incentive for individuals to incorporate, to take advantage of the preferential tax rate, essentially the results from that deferral, compared to what they would be paying if they were making investments as individuals. So if you're making an investment as an individual from your business that's not incorporated, then you're going to pay a much higher tax rate than if you incorporate and take advantage of this this tax deferral that would be still in place if the bill passes.
Through the chair to the member opposite. Yes, I mean, yes, business people will take advantage of whatever the rules will allow them to take advantage of. Absolutely. You're taking a risk, and I remember the most recent business I started was back in 2003. And I had that for 9 years before I sold it, but I can remember going to the bank and my wife saying, "What's on the line?" And they said, if he fails, you lose your house. You start over again from scratch, and that was scary when you were in the early 40s, I guess it was, mid 40s, late 40s. But anyway, it's scary to start over. So yes, it is an advantage when you're starting a business to take advantage of whatever rules are there for you, and this some people will take advantage of for sure. Yeah.
So I guess I'm still trying to understand why you brought this bill forward that really only affects about 1.5% of our small businesses. You gave the numbers earlier, and so given the exemptions that are in place to ensure the bulk of small businesses can continue to benefit from this tax deferral by investing up to a maximum of $50,000, then this really is about ensuring that tax deferral remains in place on the provincial side for about 1.5% of our businesses, small businesses. I mean,
through the chair to the members opposite, yeah, would I have liked to have had the $10 or $12 million in extra tax that this would have provided? Yes, but you know what? It may be small number to you, I guess, but it's 350 small businesses. Small business is what we're trying to develop more of here in New Brunswick, not to chase away or not to punish. It is hard to go in a small business. It's hard to make it in a small business. It's a lot of work, and it's days and years of worry and sleepless nights and all the rest of it. So. Yes, are we helping some people? Yes, we are. We're trying to help them, and we're trying to encourage small business with the small business investors tax credit, and with programs like this that is going to save small business, according to the CFIB and the Chambers of Commerce in Moncton and Fredericton and St. John and the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. protecting small businesses is got to be what government is about, I think, and trying to encourage people to take that leap into small business, and hopefully take the leap into a larger business and take it up even further. But you got to start somewhere, and small business is where you start, and then you go from there. And we encourage people, and this is one program that we think helps them along the way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that that response. I guess has the minister actually had any discussions with the federal finance minister about the intent to exempt New Brunswick from these the removal of this tax deferral?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I know that finance ministers met from across the country with Minister Morneau about this in 2018, because it would have been out of the former government. And I think that was before he made the significant changes to ensure that the legitimate concerns that small businesses brought forward were addressed. Has the minister received any correspondence from the federal minister of finance regarding New Brunswick's intent to keep its part of this tax deferral in place?
Through the chair to the member opposite, there was a meeting of the finance ministers back in early December. It was about 2 weeks after I started this job. We were in the middle of getting the capital budget together, so I did not go. I sent the deputy minister, who at that time was deputy minister of finance. She represented me. That deputy minister has since moved on and works for another area of government. But the federal government has been notified in writing that we are not participating in this program. We're opting out.
So, thank you for that. Through Mr. Chair to the Minister, have you received any response from the federal government as a result of that notification?
Through the chair to the member opposite, Finance Canada and CRA, I'm told, has been working with staff behind the scenes on implementing the policy. So, yes, Finance Canada and CRA have been working with the staff.
I guess, Mr. Chair, this once again speaks to the need for an overall look at the fairness of our taxation system, because we're dealing with a specific measure here that outside of the context of that bigger look at our taxation system. I mean, everyone says everyone should be paying their fair share, and I guess the question I have is, why wouldn't this 1.4% of private corporations in the province be willing to pay their fair share of taxes related to investment income above the 50,000 or more threshold that's been established? I mean, that's pretty significant. And investment income, you know, I mean, it's passive. It's not part of your business activities. It's something that just results from making those investments. So it seems to me the changes that were made by the federal government exempted the vast majority of private corporations in the province, leaving just a handful who you know, are going to be who have the capital generated from their after-tax revenue in sufficient quantities to make large investments and recoup large returns on that. And yet that will continue to be protected by this tax deferral rather than getting taxed at the rate that would be there if the deferral weren't available. So I guess I'd like to hear the minister's view on the question of everyone paying their fair share of taxes, because of course we've seen a shift over time in terms of the relative contribution to government revenues that corporations and businesses have been making versus households. And households proportionally have been making more and more of a contribution to our tax base, and businesses and corporations less and less over the last number of decades. So what is his view of fairness in the tax system?
Through the chair to the member opposite, I might argue that when you said it wasn't part of business activities, I would argue that it was, I guess, of your part of your business activity. Saving, expanding your business, bonuses for staff, like that. But getting back to this is not, it's not like new legislation that's giving somebody a new break. What we're doing is keeping exactly what we had before. We're not changing anything at all. We're keeping what we had before, keeping it in place and protecting people that way so that they don't experience a new tax. That's all we're trying to avoid people paying taxes. We've asked that, or we've run on the platform of not increasing taxes, and in this case, that was about not increasing taxes.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it may be semantics, but it is a tax deferral. It's a deferral from a tax that otherwise would be paid. And you know, $12 million in this budget is, in the way this budget has been written, would be certainly help when you look at things like the unsafe situation in the Chalmers emergency room, where people are waiting way too long who need to be seen by a physician, because we haven't apparently got sufficient funds to increase the number of clinician hours to devote to the ER there, just as one example. This 1.4% of private corporations in the province, if they have far more than $50,000 in after-tax revenue free and available to invest, they're not scraping by, I wouldn't say. So it's perplexing to me that the Minister of Finance wouldn't want to see that revenue to be available to meet some real needs, to adequately fund public services that currently aren't being adequately funded. And we could make a list of public services that are not being adequately funded, that really need to be adequately funded to help people. But, Mr. Speaker, I'll end here and extend my thanks to the Minister and his staff for their responses.
Thank you, member. I was going to offer you a pair of sunglasses there.